Coming up on Plane Crazy Down Under, we catch up with champion Aussie aerobatic performer Aarron Deliu, covering his career achievements, life as an air race rookie, and the importance of goal setting.
The mental aspect is so huge. 5% of it, for me, is the actual technique and flying, whereas 95% of it is all mental.
We're also looking ahead at the 2024 Pacific Airshow on the Gold Coast as we get plane crazy.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. I know it's been a little while since we last put out a PCDU episode, but it's great to have you with us. My name is Steve Vischer, and joining me as always, the man variously known as Falcon124, Mick, and that guy with the funny-looking pink glasses. That's a pretty good wrap-up, I think, Grant McHerron, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a summary. Hey, you and various other cannot be said in public phrases also apply. But yeah, it's hey, Steve, it's great to see you.
Now, I'm seeing you now. Of course, we do this with a video link up these days because, you know, we're all very high-tech here at PCDU World Headquarters. And my friend, you look a bit under the weather. It must be winter or something. How you doing?
Well, I've had a chest infection since the 10th of June, and we're currently recording on the 18th of July. 2 rounds of antibiotics got rid of the worst of it, but it's still happening, and I'm still not getting a full night's sleep due to coughing. So it's like, yay, COVID didn't work, so nature's trying all new things to kill us.
Oh, crikey, yes. Well, I don't know. It certainly is a very, very chilly winter here, that's for sure, if you're listening from somewhere outside of Melbourne. Some people might say, you know, Grant, that, well, it's always chilly in Melbourne. And you know what? You're mostly right, but it's been a pretty cold winter here. It's been a pretty cold. Not a lot of good flying weather around. But anyway, Grant, you know, we're looking at a place that always has much better weather. And, of course, that's the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast Airshow, the Pacific Airshow, Gold Coast is almost upon us again.
That's right, mate. Middle of August, we're going to be up there once again. I'm going up early for some of the media stuff and to catch up with folks. And you're coming up on the Friday night, and we'll be present for the Saturday and Sunday of the show. If anyone out there is going to be at the show, give us a yell. It'd be great to catch up and tell us what day or days you're going to be there, because we may have to wind up out at Southport Airport to catch up with a whole lot of folks out there to record great content for you. But, you know, we will be based in Cavill, and we will be coming back there in the evening and or on site at the main display area on the beach.
Yeah, it was good catching up with some people last year when we were there, and we'd really like to do a bit more of that this year, and just to talk flying and really just to, you know, really just catch up and talk about really anything you like. We can even talk about trains if you like, if you know, really boring. But hey, we're going to be at an air show. There was a real success last year, and I know we talked about it extensively, Grant, at the time, but the concept of bringing an air show out of the airport and bringing it to a wider general public audience, I think was a really great way to go. And I think they've learnt a lot from the first event last year. So, you know, I'm sure they'll be bringing a lot of new performers this year, but somebody who was there last year and put on a great display and who will be back with us this year is Aarron Deliu. Now, Aarron is certainly up and coming on the world aerobatic performance circuit, on the airshow circuit, if you want to look at it that way. And he's based these days in the United States, but he actually hails from right here in Australia. So really going up and doing some great stuff and representing around the world. Now, speaking of exotic locations around the world, Aarron joins us from just one such location now. Hi, Aarron. Thanks for joining us.
G'day, Steve. It's great to be here. Right now, I'm in Poland in a little town called Leszno. We've just completed Antidotum Air Show, and it was a phenomenal air show. But yeah, it's in the middle of Europe, and it's absolutely beautiful out here.
I suppose it's the perfect time in Europe for flying at this time of year. And I mean, is the air show scene, how do you find it over there, just as an aside?
It's absolutely magic. So you've got all these countries with different rules, different regulations, also closely knitted and tight. Like, it's just everything's right next door. So you can jump from one air show in one country with one different set of regulations, different language, different culture, and fly 1 hour. And suddenly you're doing a whole different air show with different rules, different culture, different language. It keeps it really interesting. I mean, flying air shows by itself is just amazing, fun, and challenging to say the least. But when you mingle in cultures and language and regulations, it makes it a hell of a lot more interesting. And I have to say fun. I mean, it's a challenge.
Well, looking at your career, I'd say you do kind of like a challenge, because you got into flying pretty much at school, and you did gliders at 15, ATP at 21, everything in between, as soon as your age allowed it. So What motivated you to focus on flying, and how did you afford it back then?
It's a question I get asked a lot. The short answer is luck, I would say. It all started when I was 14. I did a careers day at a school event when I was 14. High school got a bunch of professionals from different industries to community hall, and you could just walk around and talk to different people from different professions and ask them questions and learn about what they do. And there was this pilot standing there in a uniform, and so I walked up to him. He was actually a military pilot. He was a fighter jet pilot. And I remember walking up to him and saying, so what do you do? Young, naive pilot, like guy, just, asking this, guy in a uniform. And, he looked down at me and said, I'm a pilot. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, I fly airplanes. I'm like, yes, what does that mean? And, at that point in my life, I'd seen airplanes fly overhead, never been on an airplane. But it never even entered my brain that someone was being paid to sit at the front of that machine, punching buttons, doing things and making that plane go somewhere, let alone was it a possibility for someone even like me. But, this guy, he just kind of opened up and told me all about his career and about what he does. And I was mesmerized. It was this dumbstruck moment for me to be like, wow, that's actually a job. That doesn't sound like a job. It sounds like fun and games. It sounds like right up my alley. And, that was when I was all mesmerized and all excited and happy. And then the realization came into it when I said, hey, so how do I do that? He gave me the long list of how to get there. And one of those things was I needed to be a student with physics, with maths, with science. I was quite the opposite, Stephen Grant. I was a C, D student. I preferred to run around in circles, kick the football, tackle my friends and just run amok. But, mindless of that, you said I like challenges. Even though he said that, I remember I went home and told my parents, I said, I want to be a pilot. I think they kind of looked at me and like, yeah, right. Told them what the pilot told me that I needed to do. And again, they were like, yeah, how are you going to do that? I just said, look, I will. And I did. I sat down with the school principal, told them that I was going to do that. And they literally said, well, it's too late. You can't, because it was midway through the year. They're like, it's too late. You can't step up to those grades, to those subjects and prove that you can get those grades to then enter TE and get those different subjects. But I stood my ground and I said, look, I will do it. I'll do extra tutoring. And long story short, they kind of stepped me up into the higher classes, and I did very well in school in the end. I wasn't top of the class, but I was in I would say the top 10%. And yeah, and here I'm now on a podcast with you two gentlemen.
It reminds me of a speech that another rather famous aerobatic pilot here in Australia always says when he does a presentation. He says, I'm no one special, but I just work hard. And I think that's kind of a very similar message you're putting across there, and probably something that our younger listeners can benefit from for sure.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, I talked about the challenges with the air shows over in Europe, and obviously, you kind of picked up on it pretty early. I think I seek challenges. I think a lot of people tend to steer away from when there's a roadblock. I was just talking to a friend earlier today, and, he's an air show friend, and he's got a roadblock right now that he's trying to get around. I said, well, I think this is an opportunity, that maybe is trying to steer you down a different road to figure out something else and maybe build something bigger and better. And kind of that's the way I look at challenges. I kind of seek them as opposed to run away from them.
So was aerobatics another challenge?
Big time. For me, I was really lucky again. I got through all my licenses by applying for scholarships. I didn't have money as a kid. I did a lot of odd jobs, paperboy, I was a barista for a time of my life. I was coaching young kids' soccer team. I worked at a fish and chip shop, good iconic, job in Australia. And that all enabled me to get my license. But I got my license. I had minimal hours. It's like, well, what do I do now? No one's going to employ you. But once I completed my test, the chief instructor or the chief test pilot said, do you want to do an aerobatic rating? And I was like, yeah, why? He goes, well, someone wants to sponsor you, someone that I hadn't met, and they said wants to sponsor you to do your aerobatic rating and participate at Busselton Airshow. And I was just taken aback that, this was, again, offered to me. Why me? I think, again, it was luck, right time, right place. And I jumped at it and got sponsored to get an aerobatic rating, and then did my first airshow, which was the Busselton Airshow in WA.
Well, let's talk about some of those aerobatic, achievements that you've had across the journey, because they are significant. Advanced, unlimited categories, Europe, Australia, and of course, as we mentioned, you're living in the United States now. Tell us a bit about some of the training you've gone to, and tell us a bit about mental preparation and I guess physical preparation.
So with my training, I stepped away from aerobatics for a bit because I had to, I guess, grow up and seek a career that made more money. So I went into the airlines and then business jets. That then gave me the ability to save up and then buy an aircraft, which kind of, for me, was step one to get an aircraft. I like to learn in a couple of different ways, but one of the ways I like to learn is by myself. I love to read. I love to experiment. And so literally I bought an extra aircraft. I had some basic training in an extra. Obviously, I had the aerobatics ratings from when I was in Australia, but I bought an extra and went out and started practicing. It was a single seat aircraft. So it's an aircraft that I couldn't be taught in, and just started practicing. And I made a lot of mistakes, but I learnt a lot and kept it obviously very safe. But that's kind of more of a rapid way that I can learn. And so I took that path. And when I got to a certain foundational level that I was happy, I went to Europe and started training with some very high level coaches, some world aerobatic champions. Francois Levot was one of them. He was a past world aerobatic champion, and I learnt so much from flying with him. Another gentleman called Klaus Schrott, a German gentleman and an absolute godfather for aerobatics. He took me under his wing and mentored me and coached me for 2 years. And in that time, I learned so much. And that's where I got my opportunity, actually, for the Red Bull. That's where I got an invite to join the Red Bull Air Race. So with all that, taking that training with Levot and with Klaus Schrott, I learned that aerobatics is not just about flying an airplane. You mentioned, Steve, that, where did I pick up the other side? So the mental aspect is so huge in flying. I think right now when I do a competition, 5% of it for me is the actual technique in flying, whereas 95% of it is all mental. It's, am I in the right headspace? Am I in a state of flow? Am I positive talking myself? Am I negative talking myself? What's going on around me in the greater circle of my life, relationships, and how am I compartmentalizing all that to then, when I hop in that aircraft, switch that off and switch on just being in a state of flow and a state of harmony to be able to perform like at my natural best.
Getting your game face on, as they say.
For sure. I don't know if you've actually ever hit that Brant and gone and done any sport and where you've hit a state of flow. But for me, it's absolute bliss. When your brain switches off and you're doing something that I think you're designed to do, it's amazing. It's so captivating and so enormous, yet so insignificant. I know that's contradictory, but so many flights that I've done, competition flights where I've done really well, I've landed and I'm like, geez, that just went by. Did that just happen? It went by so quick, but it was so blissful and so joyous and happy. I can't explain the feeling.
It must be immensely satisfying to get out there and really be in that state. You mentioned Francois Levot there, and of course he did compete in the Red Bull Air Race. Tell us about your experience getting into that, going through the Challenger Series. We know that the World Championship Air Race is no longer a thing, but we can always live in hope that there may be some sort of reboot at some point. But tell us about that experience and getting accepted and what that was like to be a part of.
At the time, Steve, the Red Bull Air Race was the pinnacle of everything and the culmination of everything. I thought I kind of finally made it. I got invited by Klaus Schrott. He obviously was coaching me at the time and asked me if I would like to join the air race. I was like, how is that a question? Of course, right? And so going to the camp was just absolutely amazing. Flying at 200 knots, that low to the ground, 15 feet from the ground between pylons is, again, that state of flow and bliss was on every flight. Just so doing aerobatics and competitions, depending on what's going on in the greater circle of my life, it's, maybe I can hit that state of bliss 70% of the time, and 30% of it, I'm just like, I could have done better. But with the Red Bull and that camp, it was like every flight was just a state of bliss. And I really did well at it. Humbly, if I can say, Klaus was really impressed, and Steve Jones was the other coach at the camp, and they extended me an invitation to join the air race and gave me a contract and said, "Congratulations, you're in." And
fantastic.
Yeah, and then only for a month later to find out that the air race was going to shut its doors. So it was kind of from absolute, peak happiness to not knowing, that whole roadblock and challenge thing just was a big, hit in the face, and, trying to see where things were going to go from there. But as you said, there is going to be a reboot. It's just a matter of who and when. There is maybe 3 different groups trying to put it together. There's the Air Race X, which they're doing some great things. Yoshi, his team, and Lexus, the sponsor, and all that, they're doing fantastic stuff and really promoting the sport. Then there's 2 other groups that are doing really good, making moves. They're doing it a little bit more quietly. And it's hard to predict who's going to kind of hit the streets first to make a in-person live race. But I do think it's just a matter of time, because I can't imagine a world without an air race. I just can't. I can't envision it.
You mentioned Yoshi Moroya there. I've always had a theory, if we just used his fan base to get the air race up and running, it'd be a world phenomenon by now. He has the most fanatical fans.
He is a social icon, a sports legend. He is what the sport needs. And you know what? He's also a gentleman. When I did my Red Bull Air Race camp, he was there training, and he's just a gentleman. So humble, he's a smaller guy, but just such a fun, energetic, just go-getter, and just an awesome guy to speak to. Really passionate, really cool guy.
We've actually, through the journey of our program, we've had a long association with the Red Bull Air Race and many of their pilots, and of course, Matt Hall. Have you had a lot to do with Matty?
Yeah, I met Matt Hall for the first time last year at Pacific Airshow in Huntington Beach. No, it wasn't last year. It was the year before. And yeah, we bumped into each other. It's funny. We've been in the same arena, same circles, but just never actually crossed paths. And I guess that's because I've been predominantly overseas, where he's been in Australia primarily based. So, yeah.
Now, one of the things that you have done that is kind of like aerobatics with pylons, so it's almost like a Red Bull Air Race meets an aerobatic championship, is this Sky Grand Prix down in South Africa, where you flew there in 2023, and I believe it's happening this year and into the future. Can you describe the comp and what you know about it?
So again, lucky and privileged to be invited to it. So in 2022, I was asked if I would like to compete in Sky Grand Prix, which they've had 3 races to date. The model is similar to Red Bull in terms of pylons flying in between the pylons, but then they connect classical aerobatics. So, and original air race, Red Bull Air Race actually did this, and then they went away to basically focusing on speed and time. But the original Red Bull Air Race had you doing a certain maneuver, coming in, doing a touch and go, and all these different maneuvers during a timed race. And so where Sky Grand Prix comes in, they're combining the pylons with a time component, but also with a judged component. So after you fly through the pylon, you have to maybe pull to the vertical and do a certain maneuver on the upline, a certain maneuver on the downline, and then fly back through that pylon, and then go through the other pylon and do a different maneuver again. And it's a set sequence that every competitor needs to perform. but at the same time, there's the clock. So you need to decide and focus on either performing everything really quickly or performing it slower and more accurately, and working out which is going to weight more, what's going to benefit your overall score to enable you to win.
That's a good challenge.
It's amazing. And I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to figure it out. And I won the last championship, which was awesome to do for Australia.
Congrats.
Yeah.
There's an interesting difference between the way the air race series went in the end, because there was in its earlier days, there was a much greater aerobatic element to it, but they made a decision to change that at one point and sort of make it more a flat-out race. But this, as you're describing here, seems to be going back to a bit of both, which is good.
Yeah, I think there's space for two types of races in the air. I think there is the air race pure speed through pylons, and I would say is more akin to like Formula One, going as fast as you can, the peak of technology. And then I would call Sky Grand Prix more of like a rally. It's where you've got more dynamic, you're racing in a forest, you've got dirt track, changing conditions. That's kind of where I see it. So I do think there's space for both races to exist.
Cool. So
yeah,
we've talked about air races and aerobatics and all that kind of stuff, but let's take a step. As you mentioned earlier, you're in Europe at the moment. You've done a lot of work in Europe and around the world. But as Steve and you were discussing right at the start, based in Florida. So what's an Aussie boy doing in the US? What inspired you to move over there? And what, are you performing in lots of air shows over there?
You hit the nail on the head with the last statement. You said, am I performing a lot of air shows over there? We moved to the US for that exact reason. It's where air shows happen. The most air shows in the world happen in the US of A. It's such a mecca for aviation. I get to live on an air park here, which is great. My front yard is the runway, which is awesome. My backyard, there's a hangar. It's got my yeah, I know, it's a hard life. It's got my aeroplanes in it, and I can wake up in the morning, push the planes out, and go fly to a venue and do an air show over the weekend, and then fly home. It's absolutely amazing. Australia will get there one day. It's not there yet, and we don't have the same number of air shows. But the US, it's in the hundreds of air shows, and they're just, you've got the Blue Angels, the Thunderbirds, the dynamic teams. There is just, the diversity is just second to none. It's absolutely amazing.
Aaron, you're going to get in a bit of a hobby horse of mine because, as listeners will know, I did pretty much all of my flight training, and I lived in the States for a couple of years, many, many years ago. I still hold a US license. I'm a big fan of the way aviation and GA in particular runs over there. What do you think? What can we learn in Australia from the way they do things over there?
It's cultural. I think it's actually a bit of a roadblock to get it to get Australia to adapt to the American way. It's a free per use system here, so you don't pay to land on a runway in the US of A, but you do pay to land on a runway in Australia. You don't necessarily pay for air navigation charges in the USA, but you do in Australia. So the entry and the friction to enter and to get into aviation is a lot less. Also, the cost of just fuel is a lot cheaper than it is in Australia.
And that's even after they've put the taxes on there to fund that aviation infrastructure.
Big time. And the cost, there's so many aircraft here, so renting an aircraft to get your license here is so much cheaper. So the way I see it, in the rest of the world, it's a privilege to have a license. It's a privilege to be a pilot. In America, it's your right to be a pilot. And that's the cultural system here. Is America has built, their legal system and their constitution. It's built on rights. It's your right to have this. It's your right to have that. Whereas I feel the rest of the world could learn a lot from that. I do admire what America has built in that regard. And I think that's why aviation has really flourished here.
Isn't it cool? One of the concepts I really love over in the States, we're probably sidetracking a little, Aaron, but hey, this is, like I say, it's a hobby horse. The American FBO, where you can pull into a small airport in the middle of nowhere, grab the car from the operator while he puts some fuel in your plane, go into town, get a meal, whatever. I so wish we could. I'm not saying that doesn't happen here, but it certainly doesn't happen here the way it happens there. And it's one of those cultural things you speak of, I think, where it's just so cool the way it works there.
Yeah, and the other thing in that there's a runway every 5 to 10 miles. So I recently did a show in New Orleans, and it was awesome, epic air show. But on the way there, I was going to make it there in one stop. So I was going to stop at one place and continue on. So it's going to be 2.5 hours first leg, 2.5 hours next leg. So unfortunately, I had a coffee and I drank a bunch of water before I took off on my first leg. So sure enough, 30 minutes into the flight, I was like, kind of need to hit the toilet, but I've got 2 hours to my next destination. So let's just hold it and get there. But then as I'm flying around and I'm looking at the map and I'm looking down, I'm like, hang on, I'm not in Australia. I'm not in Europe. There's a runway every 5 miles. I can actually go land and use the toilet and go. And sure enough, I landed at this little airport called Inverness, walked into the FBO, said hello to everyone and used the bathroom, had a drink from the vending machine, didn't learn my lesson, hopped back in the plane and then took off. And it was just like, it's just amazing. The infrastructure here for aviation is just phenomenal.
Yeah, you'd eventually find a small rural runway somewhere in Australia, land, taxi out of the way, find a scrub, use that, and jump back in the plane and take off. Yeah.
Yeah. See, you'd get arrested for that in America, though. You can't use a scrub in America. You have to use the bathroom.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
We do have some freedoms.
Yes.
Aarron, you mentioned your aircraft that you've got over there. Tell us about some of what you're flying.
So I have an Edge 540 specifically for the air race, waiting for that air race to start up. One of the races told me basically it's going to start up soon. This was a year ago, and so we're kind of geared up waiting for that to happen. Also, we have the extra 330 SC, and that's the primary airshow plane. If the air race doesn't start in the near future, the Edge 540 is going to be added to the menu on the airshow circuit as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I think it'd be kind of nice to start displaying the Edge on the circuit.
It's a very nice aircraft.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how many Gs you can pull, and it just sustains it. The energy management in that is amazing.
Yeah, we have. I do commentary a lot of shows out here, and Glenn Graham does an amazing show in an Edge 540, and his display, he's flying the wings off the damn thing. It's quite an impressive piece of aircraft, and he really works it all the way.
That's awesome. I haven't met Glenn, but yeah, I've seen some stuff online, and it looks impressive. It looks very a lot of Gs.
Well, you may well get a chance to meet him at the Gold Coast Airshow this year. I see you coming back to perform at that.
I am, yeah. Pacific Airshow again extended the invitation, and yeah, we jumped at it. We said, yeah, of course. But this year, last year I flew an extra. This year I'm going to be flying a Cap 232, which is a beautiful black French aircraft.
I think I know the airframe. It's that black looking navy, really dark. There's a couple of folks flying it. It's not based in South Australia, is it?
It is South Australia.
Yeah.
She's out near Murray Bridge. She's pure black. She's got like a little bit of a checker on it right now, but we're going to logo her up for the show.
Cool. Yeah, I was doing commentary out last couple of air shows in South Australia I've been at. That aircraft's been thrown around the sky. It looks great.
The Cap is amazing. That Cap can do some maneuvers that I guess the extra and the Edge can't, because it's got a really defined rudder. So your capabilities of that plane are immense and phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to demonstrating that at the Pacific Airshow.
So you're working up a specific routine just for that, given that you're using a different aircraft, or modify something that you normally use?
Yeah, so I've created a couple of new figures that I do in the extra 330 and the Edge. One of them's called the Boomerang, and it's iconic. It's a big hit in the US because, Australian, and, it's iconic. It's, better than calling it shrimp on the Barbie. But
100%.
Yeah, so with the Cap, it performs it better. Actually, it does the Boomerang even better because it's a primarily a yaw and gyroscopic maneuver. So it's going to be pretty cool. You guys are going to be there, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
You have to tell me what you think of my Boomerang.
Oh, definitely, we will. That maybe we're getting close to wrap time, but you've said about the unique aspects of flying the Cap and the routine you're going to do. But you're going to be in Australia, mate. You're coming back. Admittedly, you'll be on the wrong coast. Sorry about that. But What do you find is unique about flying at? You did it last year. You'll do it this year. Flying at the Gold Coast. You've done Huntington, but what are you looking forward to about being back here in Australia?
So I just finished telling you about how all the air shows are in America, and that is true. But the exception is Pacific Airshow. They are an American company that started in Huntington, and they came across, and obviously were looking for a different venue, and they found the Gold Coast. And Kevin Elliott and his team are just amazing at what they do. They just understand hospitality, they understand entertainment, they understand air shows, and they do shows phenomenal. And Pacific Air Show in Australia for me is one of a kind. They truly bring entertainment, family fun to the beaches of the Gold Coast. And for me, why I love flying it, the venue, the Gold Coast, I'm pulling up to the vertical from 2 feet above the water, and right beside me is a skyscraper. As I'm going up to the vertical, the beach is flooded with people. You can see them cheering, jumping. I think it's the best venue on earth. I just wish it was there 12, 13, 14 years ago. I mean, better late than never. But it's definitely worth the long flight, the long international 30+ hours to get there.
It was certainly a spectacle, and we talked to Kevin Elliott, and I'm sure you'll agree, the concept of you bringing the air show out of the airport and bringing it to the masses. I think that's a unique concept, certainly here in Australia.
They get the entertainment and the hospitality like no others. The shows I'd been to before more felt like either at conventions or corporate events, whereas this is the place where you can pull your esky out and have a tinny, sit on the beach and watch a show with the family. I mean, it's just awesome,
Aarron Deliu, we really want to thank you for your time today. We know it's very early in the morning from where you're speaking to us there in Poland. We really do appreciate it. Just before we go, though, tell us where can we find you online, and so people can find out a bit more about who you are and what you do.
So I've kept a fairly low profile, just kind of building myself up skill-wise and kind of capabilities. But now we've kind of gone online. So we have a website. It's aarron.aero. That's AARRON.aero, AERO. And we're building up our Instagram and our Facebook, and it's just my name, which is Aarron Deliu, AARRON Deliu. We keep, kind of putting all of our content, our posts, our updates on our schedule, where we're going to be, and we're doing a lot more unique posts coming out over the next couple of weeks. So looking to connect with people that are interested in aviation. I'm looking forward to sharing the passion. As I said, I got into aviation because someone took at the time out of their day to tell me about what they do. And so it's one of those ways that I can give back. It's one of the reasons I do air shows, is to inspire and to encourage people to kind of seek challenges, to live out their dreams, and hopefully become a pilot or do whatever they choose to do. But if I can inspire just one person, it makes everything worthwhile.
That is absolutely perfect, mate. Absolutely perfect. Aarron, we wish you continued success, mate, and we really look forward to meeting you soon.
Mate, absolute pleasure talking to you both, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
And as we let Aarron head off back to bed, being over there in Europe, we really do appreciate him joining us at what was a very early hour in the morning. And you know what, Grant, it was morning time when we spoke to him as well. So, that's very early for me, if anyone knows anything about me. But,
sorry, I had to get you up before the crack of noon.
Hey, you know what, Grant, and this might upset a few people. I don't mean it that way, but it's... one of the things I find in aviation sometimes, and particularly in the aerobatic scene, a lot of people with some very significant personalities, some very big egos, if you might say. Wasn't it refreshing just to sit there and listen to Aarron talk with such passion and such humility? I found that so refreshing.
Yeah, I found if you get a bunch of the aerobatics crew together over beers, they're all passionate and all wonderful. But yeah, Aaron's bringing a whole new view to it. And it's great. I'm really looking forward to catching up with him next month when he's here and watching him do that boomerang stunt.
Yes, it'd be really interesting. So once again, if you want to catch up with what Aarron's doing, his website once again is Aarron. That's AARRON.aero. And a pretty slick looking website there too, I must say. Hey, what do you think, Grant? He seems didn't a little bit slip there about the possibility of the air race coming back. I know every time we talk to Matt Hall, and anyone talks to Matt, they always ask him, do you think the air race will come back? I mean, we had a lot to do with the air race back in the day when it was popular, and I've been to a few of them, and it really is such a spectacle. It was such a shame when it went, so I really hope that it comes back.
Yeah, I need to be able to go to one. I every time it was on, I missed it. I wasn't able to get to where it was either, anywhere in the world, let alone in our own backyard, so to speak, over in Perth. But yeah, so one day I hope to get there, but it was great to watch on TV as well, and fantastic to catch up with so many of the pilots involved in the air race and have them on the show. So yeah, if it comes back in one form or another, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm also watching Air Race X to see what happens there.
Yeah, Air Race X. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? I don't know whether I can come at that idea of the virtual air race, but maybe I'm just being an old and grumpy person in my 50s, Grant. I don't know.
Maybe when we're catching up with people, we can ask some of the young folks and see what they think of it.
Yeah, very, very, very true. Well, speaking of people who've gone high tech these days, Grant. There he goes. Contacted playingcrazydownunder.com, folks. I know we haven't had a show for a little while, and we apologise for that, but we still do love hearing from you. And our Grant, I think you have some actual printed email there once again.
Yep, I do. It's just, hang on, let me open the folder. There it is.
I should have given you the cue.
And it's from Mick, our friend formerly from Franga Line. And it's great. Once again, can always count on Mick to reach out and say hi, and also ask where the heck we've been, because he's needing his PCDU fix. But yes, he opened up a one of the aircraft radar display kind of applications at one point, and it just happened to be at the right time of day, and there were so many airliners all heading north. And it almost looked like it was a game of volley. You know how when you look at the live feed or compressed, sped up feed going from the US to Europe, it looks like a tennis game. They go from one side to the other and back. Well, these ones were all going north. It was like, well, if he had waited a little while longer and done another shot, it probably would have been everyone coming south again. But yeah, we were joking that it was everyone getting away from Melbourne winter, heading north up to better environments, things like that.
Well, who wouldn't want to do that at this time of the year when it's freezing down here? But anyhow, Grant, it brings up an interesting point, doesn't it? I wonder how many people like to sit there, people who are in our audience, and it's all right, folks, you're all amongst friends here, who like to sit there and watch Flight Radar 24. Grant, I sit here in my studio late at night, and there's a flight that comes across here every night, and it tracks from Perth. I think it actually comes out of Kuala Lumpur originally. It's like KL to Perth to Auckland, and it flies over here every night. And I hear it coming over, and I inevitably track that one because it's one of the only airliners in the sky at that time of the night. I just sort of look out for that sort of stuff when I'm tracking. But interestingly, I was watching one of my favourite YouTubers, Noel Phillips, just recently, and he was actually on that flight. I'm thinking,
there you go.
There you go. So it all sort of ties in, really.
Well, and if you can't see it on Flight Radar 24, go to ADSB Exchange, because there's some of the secret squirrel aircraft that fly over and around our area. They don't show up on Flight Radar 24. So if you hear it and you can't see it, you know what it probably is. And you jump on ADSB Exchange, and sure enough, there it is.
Yes. Hello, Victoria Police. Are you listening? Anyway.
We need to go back and interview them. It's been so long since we were out with Polair.
Yes. Well, we could probably go out there one day. But any excuse to get out to an airport, Essendon Airport, not Essendon Fields. I refuse to call it Essendon Fields, Grant.
Sounds too much like Strawberry Fields forever.
There you go. Well, that's everything we have for you on this episode of Playing Crazy Down Under. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll try and get another one out a little bit sooner. And I think by us heading up to the Gold Coast in a few weeks, Grant, that shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Yep, and don't forget, if you're looking for a fix on news from Down Under and information, we occasionally pop up on the Airplane Geeks with an Australia desk, like we just did for the first time this year. Yep. And you can also hear my dulcet tones with some of the others on the Australian Defence Magazine podcast. Just look for ADM Podcast or australiandefence.com.au and follow the links to podcast. You'll find more info there. Lots of great info on new defence industry developments down here in Oz.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend that show. I mean, I'm probably biased because, of course, I sit here and produce it, but it's some of the guests they have on there, not only aviation-wise, but if you're into defence in any way, I mean, some of the information that comes out in that podcast. One recently about automated systems and how that technology is starting to come into defence. Absolutely fascinating. So, australiandefence.com.au. And Grant, can I just plug something that I'm doing? Why not?
Well, it's plugcast time.
It's plugcast time. As I put on my big radio voice, I've actually been developing a radio show for the community radio market here in Australia. Yeah, and it's actually 4 stations are already taking it, which is shocking to me because it means I've got to actually pull my finger out and make a few more of them. But
and they were wondering why PCDU was lagging. It's not entirely because of that. Don't worry, folks. A lot of it was me.
Yeah, we've been pretty busy. But so the Clear Signal is the show, and you can find that at clearsignal.com.au. It's not out as a podcast just yet, but if you want to listen to some samples of some of the work I've been doing, more a general mass market radio show, just scratching a bit of an itch, Grant, a career itch, something I've always wanted to do is to step out of aviation and just challenge myself to be able to interview people on a broader range of topics. And I've had some fantastic guests on there so far. So, if you'd like to get over and see what I've been doing there, clearsignal.com.au. And I will put it out as a podcast at some point, but that's just going to take a little bit of re-engineering, Grant, because it's got copyrighted music baked into it, which is fine for radio stations because they've all got their licenses. But I got to say, mate, licensing copyrighted music to use in podcasts is it's a minefield, and the music industry, just as an aside, and it's not aviation-wise, but boy, do they need to catch up with the way technology is going because, I'd be quite happy to buy some sort of license to play in a podcast version of this show, but it's a minefield.
Up against that when a friend and I we were doing IT for not-for-profits, for human rights, social justice, that kind of thing. And on the side track, we also had a record label. And one of our projects we were trying to do was to put in computers into places that were playing radios to actually play community artists and to play good music with royalty-free and all that. And we were actually going to track every single track actually played and submit that to APRA, the Australian Recording Agency. And, they told us, please don't ever do that because it would overload their system and break it.
Fantastic.
How they do royalties, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons we've always used royalty-free music in all of our podcasting here that we do. But anyway, that's an aside. So, if you'd like to go and have a look at what I've been doing with that, clearsignal.com.au, and I'd really appreciate you stopping by and letting me know what you think. There's a few sample interviews on there. Grant, just before we go I want to mention our friends over at the Stuck Mic AvCast. You sent me a link yesterday, and I don't know how I missed this, but you actually did an interview with Carl Valeri over there at the Stuck Mic AvCast probably a couple of months ago now, and it was a fantastic chat. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. We had a blast doing it. It was very early in the morning, which was why Steve wasn't on. We wanted to get Steve in as well, but given you'd probably only gone to bed about 2 or 3 hours before we hit record, not a good look.
I do a lot of night shift.
So that was great. It was fantastic to catch up with Carl, and it's on their YouTube. It's also on their audio, and really good fun.
It was a good interview. So and actually, you know what? Pretty slick video production on the YouTube version. I'm taking a lot of notes. Actually, I'm taking a lot of notes.
Excellent.
Anyway, folks, that's everything we have for you on this episode. Thanks for joining us. Let's see if we can catch up on the Gold Coast. But until then, have fun, fly safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Find show notes for this episode, along with our contact details and a full back catalogue of shows, at planecrazydownunder.com. Drop us a line anytime with feedback, story suggestions, or advertising inquiries. We'd love to hear from you. Title music is You Name It by Brian Simpson. Plane Crazy Down Under is a Southern Skies media production.
Southern Skies Media.